Alabama, Mississippi State this weekend. What do we predict will happen? Find out right now.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll talk about FanDuel here in just a second. But, Jimmy, Alabama, Mississippi State this weekend, big game, because every game from here on out is a big game. Because when you lose a game early, every game is a big game if you want to try and make the playoffs. So it is a big game. One thing that has just been brought to my attention is that Alabama apparently does have some dudes nicked up. Now, Mississippi State does too. Jaquavius Marks, who I don't believe he is right now. I can go back and look, but he was leading the SEC in rushing. And
I think so.
Yeah, and he's a little banged up. In fact, he got banged up in the South Carolina game. He was dealing with some like nicks and bang ups before that, but he came back in the game. He just wasn't all that super effective. Now. I wouldn't say it's questionable if he's going to play, but it's he's
he won't
day
be
to day.
100%. He won't be 100% regardless.
That's
big because with their change in offense, the radical change in offense from what they were doing under Mike Leach to what they're now doing under their new offensive coordinator, Barbie, I think his name is. The running back, it sort of all works off the running back, and they haven't recruited a ton of running backs because Leach didn't really use them. A lot of teams got rid of tight ends. Leach got rid of running backs, so they didn't really have a lot of running backs. And losing him would be a huge blow. I mean, much bigger blow to them than us losing, Jase or Roydell, because Alabama's got such good depth, including depth we haven't really seen yet.
He is second in the conference in rushing now. Boy, I don't remember a worse year in the SEC for running backs. I mean, the quarterbacks aren't great. We've talked about that. I mean, Jaden Daniels, who's good. I mean, he's really good. He's not in Joe Burrow, Bryce Young, Mac Jones to a stratosphere, but he's good. He's clearly the best quarterback. Then Spencer Rattler, again, a good player, not a great player. And same with Jackson Dart. Everybody talks about the quarterbacks. That's probably why the Pac-12 is so good right now. But look at the running backs. The leading rusher in the SEC is Cody Schrader.
Davis? No. Schrader at Missouri. Yeah, he's fine. That's the thing.
He's got 403 yards total in 4 games, Jimmy. What I'm saying is, when was the last time the leading rusher in the SEC was like, there's one guy that's averaging over 100 yards, and I'm talking about it's like right at 100. And then there's Jaquavius Marks with 352 yards. So, I mean, it's just sort of, I don't know, it's sort of a meh year in the SEC when it comes to skill position players, really across the board.
Sort of reminds me of Alabama. I mean, it's like a bigger Alabama, and by that I mean, and look, this isn't a swipe at Alabama or saying that the team's not good. Alabama's makeup of the roster is a little different. I would say instead of having a small army of Saban all-stars, guys vying to be on the all-time Saban team. We don't really have that on this team. Not much of it. We got a couple. I mean, Kool-Aid and Dallas. I say Latham to an extent, maybe a couple of younger guys. But the point is, the depth of good is the best trait on this team. We're playing 3 running backs, 7 receivers, and 3 tight ends with the first team. I don't know that we've ever done that before. I mean, in terms of the amount of players we're using, because so many players are good, we want to get them on the field. But we also have fewer superstars than usual. And I think that sort of sums up the SEC as a whole, doesn't it? There's a lot of really good quarterbacks like Daniels and Dart and Rattler and Leary and even, as we see now, maybe Milroe, Will Rogers. There's a lot of these guys, but there's not a lot of superstars. And I would say the same thing at running back. I think the best running back in the SEC, Luke, like if I had to pick one guy who's the best in the league, it's a guy that maybe half of our listening audience is like, who? And to me, it's Ray Davis at Kentucky, who rushed for over 1,000 yards a year ago at Vanderbilt. And he's made some splash plays at Kentucky this fall. I think he's great. Judkins probably is the best running back in this league. He's just hurt.
One thing to think about is offensive line. Neither one of these offensive lines has performed very, very well at all. Mississippi State, they rank like in the 90s in terms of sacks allowed. Meanwhile, Alabama is 124th in terms of sacks allowed. That's not good. So here's the catch, though. I think that even though I love Nathan Pickering, who plays for Mississippi State, I remember Alabama wanted him badly. Good player, and I do like him a lot. But I think Alabama has a better pass rush than Mississippi State does. So
no question.
I think it wouldn't shock me at the end of this game if those two were flip-flop. Like Alabama had weirdly moved up from 124 to 90 something, and Mississippi State had dropped back to 124 from 90 something because Alabama's pass rush is so much better, and it's on fire right now.
Yeah, I don't know how State's going to do the rest of the year, but I really feel like Alabama, I think by October, November, Luke, the offensive line may be an asset at Alabama. It's clearly been a liability through 1/3 of the season, but I think it's going to move from liability to asset if we can keep these 5 guys healthy. I think that's the key to the drill is something I've noticed Nick Saban saying all the time now. If we can keep those starting 5 healthy, I think they'll be one of the better offensive lines in the league. There are signs that they're kind of turning a corner. I think it started last week against Ole Miss. This week could be another step forward for that group.
Yeah, and there are some rumors out there that Terrence Ferguson is banged up, and he might not be able to play, and he might not be able to play for a few weeks. Now, that's not the worst news in the world. I mean, he's a good player, and we certainly want the depth. And when you're having offensive line issues, you want everybody out there that you can get. But just something to think about. And the other thing is Mississippi State is not – they're worse at pass defense, like enormously worse at pass defense than there are rush defense. I'm hoping Alabama can take advantage of that. I'm hoping this is a game to build up some confidence for Jalen Milroe for some games coming up, because Texas A&M is still going to be tricky even with Max Johnson. I mean, he wasn't a bad player when he was at LSU. He's not a bad player now. He's pretty good. I don't know. I think Connor Weigman is obviously better because he won the job, but just something to think about, Jimmy. And if you want to think about some stuff, here's something you should think about: going to FanDuel. FanDuel is awesome. You can snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. This is such an awesome app. You need to go check it out ASAP. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so let's get into our game predictions here, Jimmy. And also, if you want to throw in some player predictions, and we normally do like an over-under. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to let you say, who do you think will stand out? Who do you think can really up their stock, up their profile after this game? And then I'll chime in when you're done.
Yeah, I'm going to start defensively. This is a big game for Alabama's front seven. They've got to control the line of scrimmage. They've got to stop the run with that front seven. I think Alabama may be finding a pass rush, and here's kind of the weirdness of it, or what's special about it is I think Alabama's finding a pass rush without having to blitz, which is the best of all possible worlds when you don't have to bring extra people to get pressure on the quarterback. I think Dallas Turner started a real drive towards becoming SEC Defensive Player of the Year last week, and I think that continues this week. Mississippi State's had trouble getting the pass rush blocked. Will Rogers is not the most mobile of quarterbacks. He's a good target for sacks back there. And Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell, the two of them have the highest grade in terms of pressures on quarterback per snap played in the entire SEC, 1 and 2 per Pro Football Focus. So I think big week for the Alabama pass rush. Watch for Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell both to rack up multiple sacks. Dallas honing in on SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe that pressure on the quarterback could produce a couple of turnovers. So watch Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold and Caleb Downs back in the secondary to maybe get a turnover or two. I see a pretty good. Not I wanted to say dominant, but that's just asking too much considering Alabama's struggles on the road. I think this is going to be a really, really good defensive effort for Alabama, holding Mississippi State to under 14. I think they'll be right around that 10-point mark, which is very good against an SEC team on the road. Offensively, look, Alabama's had 2 running backs rush for over 100 yards in consecutive games. I think that continues, and I think it's the key to winning the game. You don't have to dominate this game on the ground. It doesn't have to be a 350-yard rushing night for Alabama, though that would be nice. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Milroe that topped that 100-yard rush list, but I'm going to go with Jase McClellan having back-to-back 100-yard games and sort of being the bell cow to why Alabama wins. Again, it won't be a monster game. It won't be 190 yards on 14 carries. I'm thinking more like 125 yards on 15 to 20 carries. But it's enough. It's enough for Alabama to keep the ball. It's enough for Alabama to score enough points. And I think having some success on the ground will lead to some big plays in the pass game. Alabama gets a couple of those from a Jalen Milroe, who is now not just gaining experience week to week, Luke. I think he's gaining confidence week to week. I'm going to say another solid performance from Jalen Milroe. Bell cow, Jase McClellan. Alabama wins this game 30-10.
Okay, I like it. 30, boy, it when you say 30, it sort of deflates me because it feels like we've been so used to these high scoring games. I mean, up until this year, that 30 points is kind of like, but back in the Gene Stalling days, if we ever scored 30 points, it took 2.5 games to get there. And we were still 30.
You won.
And we won.
I wonder how many Stallings teams scored 30 points and lost. Not many. I'm sure it happened, but it would have been rare.
Well, I think Florida beat us in the 96 SEC title game, like 45-30.
45-30. That's what I was thinking on the top of my head, 45-30. But that's the only one that leaps to mind. But no, hey, and we talked about this in the offseason, all the criticism of Bill O'Brien. I mean, Alabama was the second highest scored. Only Ohio State scored more points than Alabama in the Bill O'Brien era, and everybody wanted to change. And the first thing I said was, okay, when we make this change, we're going to run the ball, and it's going to look different, and we're going to score less points. How on earth is that offensive coordinator going to be popular if he's scoring significantly less than Bill O'Brien? Well, really, almost any offensive coordinator would have. You couldn't keep up that pace. So really 30 on the road in the SEC, that's good. I think we've just been ruined by O'Brien and Sark before him.
I'm going to go up a notch. I'm going to go 38-10 Alabama. I know that seems like a lot. If there's a Mississippi State fan listening, they're mad saying, why are we predicting a blowout? Well, we're predicting a blowout because that's just what we do. And
LSU blew them out, and Alabama fans like to think they're as good as LSU. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But LSU beat Mississippi State, 44-14, I think it was?
Yeah, and as we discussed yesterday on the podcast, the only blowout Alabama's had on the road in the last 10 games is at Mississippi State, 49-9. And I feel like 38-10 is a good number. It's an 8:00 game, should be pretty rowdy. I want to also make this bold prediction. Jalen Milroe gets over 100 yards rushing.
I like it.
100 yards.
Very possible. I like it. I like it. And I like the matchup. Now, one thing I will say, the strength, I don't know a ton of Mississippi State's personnel like I know some other groups, but I do know this. Their inside linebackers are fantastic. Alabama's are good. Mississippi State's are good. And, of course, their best inside linebacker is an Alabama native, Nathaniel Watson, a great high-volume tackler. I mean, Nathaniel Watson's one of those guys, Luke, you can just write it down before the game. He's going to get his 10 tackles. I mean, he's extremely active, very athletic, came from a really small school. I think Maplesville, maybe in Alabama, like a 1A dude.
That's right.
But good
He
player.
Is from Maplesville.
Yeah. And I think Jet, they got another inside linebacker. It's a heck of a player. Of course, Pickering up front. And Mississippi State is a DB assembly line back there. It's not Alabama or Florida or LSU, but let me tell you, Mississippi State almost always has some defensive back that when the game's over, I'm like, who is that guy? Why didn't we recruit him?
By the way, if you heard a noise in the background, that was my phone again doing that same thing that it did a while back. It does sound like a bodily function. I'm going to do it. Well, dude, it's now I won't do it. There you go. See that noise? That is my phone when I move it out of the way. I don't want anybody to think anything else because I know there's some people who rewound it going, Did Luke just have an
They're
accident?
old. They're old. They're old. You know what's going to happen eventually. That's what the people
Yeah.
are saying.
And when you get older, you can't trust them. That's the thing.
That's
Anyway,
true.
Jimmy, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about SEC in general and go over some really fun games in the SEC this week. And we're back. Jimmy, this is one of my favorite games every year. It shouldn't be, because it's one team that joined in 92. It's one team that joined in 2012. But this game is must-watch television every time they tee it up. That is Texas A&M and Arkansas. It is the strangest. It is so SEC, and it's sort of like the reason that I can buy A&M and Arkansas in the league. I mean, because this is such an SEC-esque type thing. Arkansas had them beat last year, 100% had them beat, and they couldn't beat them. Now, there are other times that it felt like Arkansas should have won and they didn't. I don't know what the exact record between these two is. It feels like Texas A&M wins every time, but Arkansas is
About like 2
generally the
points.
better team.
Yeah,
That's
what it feels like every year. It's like A&M snatching victory from the jaws of defeat in this game every time, and it's going to be a good matchup again. I mean, I think it is going to be tight, and there's going to be points. And one thing about KJ Jefferson, he's been at Arkansas for a decade, and it seems like every KJ Jefferson game is the same. Arkansas loses in the last minute, despite a heroic effort by KJ. I mean, that's what it seems like. A Groundhog Day there, and I think this Texas A&M Arkansas series is exactly as I described, and I'm expecting it to happen again. I think A&M wins, and I think it goes according to script. I like A&M to win this game, something like 35-33, with KJ Jefferson's numbers being fantastic, running and throwing, and a heroic effort by Arkansas, and somehow the game ends with A&M with more points.
I'm going to say Arkansas. I mean, eventually, even the Washington Generals beat the Globetrotters. So I'm going to say that this is Arkansas's year, and it's going to be interesting because Alabama, after Mississippi State, these are the next two guys Alabama plays. So certainly going to keep a close eye on it. I can't wait. I love that it's an 11 o'clock game so that, it doesn't interfere with some of the other games that are out there. Then there's Kentucky and Florida. This is a fun game to me. I think the wrong team's favored.
Really?
I think Kentucky wins. Now, maybe I'm just putting too much stock in Kentucky being 4-0. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in whatever home field advantage Kentucky has. But I just still am not sold on Florida. I think Florida, they beat up Tennessee. I think that's more a testament to Tennessee isn't that great than Florida is so much better. I'm going to say Kentucky wins this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Kentucky wins. My only thing has been this. Kentucky has not played up to – I know they're undefeated, but I think in general, Kentucky hasn't played as well as people thought they would play. I mean, Devin Leary is near the dead bottom of the league in QBR. How about this? Who had this after game 4? Devin Leary's thrown more interceptions than Jalen Milroe. And who had that? But
yeah,
so Kentucky hasn't played up to what people thought they were. Florida has played better than I think. Now, people saw them against Utah in that first game, and that was bad. But who had them beating Tennessee, looking pretty good. So Florida's sort of I'm with you, Luke. What do we call these? Market correction games. I think this is a market correction because I think Kentucky's better than they've looked. Florida's not as good as they've looked. And now the twains meet, meaning Kentucky finds itself. And I'm with you, Luke. Somehow, some way, I hate saying this out loud. It sounds so weird. The better team wins this game, and the better team is Kentucky.
And here's the other thing. I want Kentucky to win because next week is Kentucky at Georgia, and I want that game to be important. I mean, it's a 6 o'clock game. Frankly, I'm a little surprised CBS didn't pick that. Yep. I mean, because you would want to see the number one team. It just shows you the allure of Alabama. I mean, they're still going to take Bama and Texas.
Jimbo versus Nick is still a thing.
Georgia, Auburn, no reason to go into this really too much. I just don't see how in the world Auburn keeps this close. I mean, I'm not sold on Georgia. Again, I'm going to say that this year in college football is just not a great quality year in college football. And Georgia, while they are really, really good, they are not the Georgia of the last two seasons. But Auburn just, man, that was such a bad performance against A&M, an A&M team that has a nice defense, but not nearly as good a defense as Georgia. And I think Georgia covers this pretty easily.
How about this? First of all, Georgia by 1 million. Georgia's going to win this game by give or take 1 million. But Carson Beck, how about this? Carson Beck, a better game manager than even Stetson Bennett, just not the playmaker Stetson Bennett was at the end of his career. I don't think Carson Beck's as good as Stetson Bennett, but maybe doing absolutely just as good a job as Stetson managing the game. Carson has he's been sacked 3 times and has thrown 1 interception in 4 games. That's amazing for a new starter. There's no negative plays, and that's why Georgia wins this game easily. It won't be spectacular, but it doesn't need to be. Just a clean game from Georgia, and they win by probably 35 or more.
We won't even mention Missouri Vandy. I mean, we all think Missouri's going to win. That is a bit of a look-ahead game.
I don't know.
Missouri's got LSU at home next week, and that is a monster game potentially. So
I like Vandy at home to beat someone in the SEC. I think Vandy's too good to go 0-8 in the league. They'll beat someone at home. Maybe this is the one.
Maybe, and because Missouri's got a look ahead potentially, but LSU and Ole Miss. This is an interesting game.
Game of the weekend to me, more so than A&M Arkansas. I'm fascinated by this game.
And I am too, and I can't wait for it. It's at 5:00. It comes on right before the Bama Mississippi State game, so you can 100% bet that Bama Mississippi State will start out on ESPN News or Lifetime or Hallmark Channel or something, because this game is going to go into some kind of funky overtime, or there's just going to be a lot of passing. So I think that it's going to take a little bit longer. My head tells me LSU wins, but my heart and my desire says I want Ole Miss to win, because I want Ole Miss to win. Obviously, if assuming Alabama wins, and if assuming my prediction right is Arkansas wins, then all of a sudden everybody in the West has losses. So I think that gives Alabama a serious leg up, obviously, in the race. And even if we're not going to win the national championship, which I guess we still could, then I do want to make it to the SEC title game. So I'm pulling for Ole Miss 100%. Lane's got to win one of these games. I think there's a lot of pressure on Lane here. I think he does.
That's why I love this. That's why I love this game, Luke. This is why there is implications for the loser here. Implications. And by that, I mean, let's say Ole Miss wins. LSU is now looking up at Alabama and A&M in the West, and defending their West title looks bleak, frankly. And I think, and then it would be LSU's second loss. So sort of out of the playoff, maybe out of the SEC championship game. And now all of a sudden LSU is going backwards in Brian Kelly's year 2. That's if Ole Miss wins. If LSU wins, Luke, I'm not saying Lane's on the hot seat. He's not. But I do think that it's very fair for Ole Miss fans to say, we're paying Lane for LSU and Alabama results. We ain't getting LSU and Alabama results here under Lane at all. If anything, all we're doing is treading water. And I could have sworn we fired David Cutcliffe for treading water, and Cutcliffe was obviously a little bit less loud, to say the least. I'm just saying, I think the loser of this game is there's ramifications there for that loser. And I think it's going to be tight. I do. I think Ole Miss has a chance. I don't think Ole Miss is going to play that bad 2 weeks in a row. I think Quinshon Judkins is going to have a get-well game at some point that's going to radically change that Ole Miss offense. Maybe that happens this weekend. LSU did not look great against Arkansas last weekend, and I think this LSU defense can give up some points, and Lane's pretty good at finding points. So I'm with you, Luke. My head says LSU wins this game. I just have sort of a gut feeling that we haven't seen the end of Lane Kiffin doing something good.
I think both players for each team, the best players for each team, respectively, are named Perkins. Centarian Perkins is awesome. Harold Perkins is awesome. And I feel like those are going to be 2 guys to watch. So, yeah, looking forward to that. And then finally, Tennessee, South Kakalaki. Look, Tennessee wants revenge, but it's so funny. Like, you always talk about all this revenge, et cetera. This is a different team. I mean, they don't have the same, they want revenge basically for Hendon Hooker, who's not even on the team anymore.
Yeah.
So
Tennessee's radically different.
I think South Carolina's got a chance here. The line seems a bit high to me. I'm going to say Tennessee, but closer than the experts think.
Exactly. I think Tennessee in a tight game. That's my official pick. So my official pick, don't think, I mean, I know this sounds like I'm fence straddling. That's not my intention, but no, my pick is Tennessee by about 7 or less. That's what I think will happen. But I'm wondering when that game's over, if mine and your, if my summation when the game over isn't, well, South Carolina beat Tennessee, and you know what? South Carolina's got a better football team than Tennessee. South Carolina's just better. It wasn't an upset at all. The better team won the game. And sort of like what we were saying about Kentucky, Florida earlier. I think Kentucky's going to win because they're the better team. I want to say South Carolina's better than Tennessee. I'm not convinced of that yet, but Saturday might convince me of it.
All right, that's going to do it for today's Locked On Bama. We'll be back shortly, especially after the game, so be ready for that. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.